It's funny, we always talk about the Switch 2 games that we really want to see, like him, like 3D Mario. I really want that. Whoa, 3D Mario talk in the first 15 seconds, that genuinely might be a record. But something that I really don't see a lot of people talking about like ever is a game that they don't want to see, or something that we really don't want to happen on Switch 2. And for a while, I'd never really felt this way. I feel like a new game in any franchise would be great. But then I saw Switch 2 make a turn and start doing something completely different. Instead of Wii U ports, they started doing Switch 1 ports. Yep, games that came out years ago, coming out again. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of these things. I feel like lots of the content that they add is just stuff that should have been there day one. Adding new boss battles to a game that really hardly had any, adding multiplayer functionality and co-op gameplay, but it should have just been there as a full package day one. And a lot of time, these little Switch 2 editions only give you like a couple of hours of content, you're done in like a day and you move on, and your $20 was not necessarily well spent. But the thing about these Switch 2 editions is they kind of quietly say, hey, low-key, your game ain't coming no time soon, man. For instance, just giving Mario Party Jamboree a Switch 2 edition makes it the big Mario Party of last year. It could also be the big Mario Party for this year as well. I mean, we don't have one slated so far, so I'm guessing it might be it until 2027. Of course, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are going to get some Switch 2 editions, which actually makes the game run so much smoother, and they were only $10 free if you have Nintendo Switch Online, so it's a pretty good deal, honestly. But of course, we're getting Switch 2 editions. Like, the next Zelda game is still years and years away. Of course, HAL Labs wanted to get a Switch 2 edition out of Kirby and the Forgotten Land because it kept fans occupied, because the next 3D Kirby game is probably not coming out for another couple of years still. Now, this is likely part of Nintendo's new initiative to keep those gaps between new releases filled with other things to play. They even came out and said that development times are going to be a lot longer now, and that they'll have plans in order to cover those gaps, and this is just one of their multiple ways that they're going to do so, by having Switch 2 editions of older games. Now, some of this might sound like speculation. If we look at every Switch 2 edition that's come out so far, it has pretty much been the replacement of any new mainline game in that franchise being announced so far since the Switch 2 has come out. And there's a lot more than what I just named, like Xenoblade Chronicles X, a Wii U game that already got a Switch remake, now coming out to Nintendo Switch 2 as a Switch 2 edition, or already out of that matter. And something similar happened with Animal Crossing New Horizons, which already got a small little Switch 2 edition, which pretty much tells us, hey, we're not getting a new Xenoblade or Animal Crossing within at least a year or two, maybe even longer. Yes, we're getting what seems to be a single-player adventure game spin-off for Splatoon with Splatoon Raiders, but they may not have dropped a quote-unquote Switch 2 edition for Splatoon 3, but they added yet again another update adding more guns, and it might run a little bit better. I'm not 100% sure about that, but regardless, they're still pumping out content for Splatoon 3, which pretty much tells me Splatoon 4 is still at least a couple years away. So naturally, I start to get a little scared, because Nintendo is mowing through their list of Switch 1 games and just dropping Switch 2 editions. It seems like every couple of months there's a new Switch 2 edition coming. So it slightly worries me for some franchises that I'm desperately looking forward to. For instance, I'm really looking forward to the next Luigi's Mansion. So if they come out and say Luigi's Mansion 3 is getting a Switch 2 edition, it's going to run really smooth at 60 frames, but I'm also going to be so upset that means we're still about a year or two, maybe even longer for Luigi's Mansion 4, especially since this October will mark 7 years since Luigi's Mansion 3. I'm still holding my breath that Mario Maker 2 doesn't get a Switch 2 edition, because odds are for $20 they're simply just going to add a new game style, which is probably going to be the Mario Wonder game style, which is really cool. I'm pretty sure people will love this, but at the same time, that's probably all they're going to add and not fix some of the issues that the core game had. Like, for instance, some of its older game styles is lacking in content, not having amiibo costumes from the first game, and Mario 3D Land's game style being extremely lackluster in course parts in comparison to what the other 4 game styles brings to the table. They need to do more than just add a new game mode. The only way to truly make this game better and make the next game extremely expansive is simply that. Going to the next game, not just reiterating the second one and trying to force feed some new content into it. Plus, I don't know if this would ever happen, but a lot of people want to see a Mario Maker 3D, where we can make 3D courses for people to complete, which would be so awesome and a brand new dimension in this Mario Maker franchise. Yes, you might say they could add it as a Switch 2 edition, but something that expansive and that huge for the series is not just going to be tied to a Switch 2 edition that's $20. Nintendo's going to charge a lot more for something like that. And of course, back to Mario Wonder. I know the game only came out 3 years ago, but with all the content that they're adding to the Switch 2 edition, it pretty much means we are not getting a 2D Mario for at least a couple of years, probably way more than that. But even though there's a pretty big list of things that I don't want to see have Switch 2 editions, there's one specific game that would actually break me if I see the announcement of a Switch 2 edition, and that is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This is one that I see talked about online almost daily, and almost every single time I see it talked about, it's filled with so many people saying how awesome this would be and how they really want it to happen, just to get even more characters added to this already humongous roster. And look, I will admit, bringing the roster up from its 89 characters up to a clean 100 would be pretty insane, because there's still like over 50 characters that I can think of right now that could be deserving to be in Smash Brothers. However, this is a game that came out at the end of 2018, and this is one of Nintendo's biggest series. And we know from Sakurai that this game takes a lot of time to develop. Even individual characters can take up to multiple months to finally get squared out. So if Sakurai does add a third fighter pass for a Switch 2 edition, that means we are going to be most likely multiple years out into the next Smash Brothers game. I mean, I'm actually starting to doubt that the game would even launch on Nintendo Switch 2 at that point. And I'm somebody that believes that Smash Brothers, yes, is all about its characters, but also it's about what you can do with those characters. With Smash Ultimate, one of my biggest complaints is that the side modes and stuff that you can actually do with this awesome roster of characters is just lackluster. I think World of Light is an NPC battling snooze fest, where there's no real story, the cutscenes are just kind of shoehorned at the beginning and the end, and doesn't hold a candle to something like Subspace Emissary. As someone who is 100% on team reboot for this game, remaking some of the series staples like Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, Bowser, Captain Falcon, and giving them some updated movesets, especially for characters that have well-established new ones from their newer games, like Mario using Cappy in Super Mario Odyssey, or maybe even Donkey Kong using his Bonanza transformations. New characters are great, but I feel like that's the direction that we need to move in, making each character, even the basic roster, feel like DLC because they have so much new moveset potential, and crafting a well-written story mode this time around where characters are once again interacting with each other and we don't get these awesome CG cutscenes that are just tied to character reveals would be so awesome. And let's face it, we're not getting a brand new story mode on the levels of Subspace Emissary for a $20 Switch 2 edition. There are still going to be people that disagree because those Smash reveals are just simply too good. People just want to see their favorite video game character get into Smash Brothers. I don't think the majority of people care about a story mode, especially non-Nintendo fans. They're just going to go pick up the game because, hey, Joker's in it, or Banjo made the cut, or freaking Steve from Minecraft is in the game now. So could Sakurai whip up a third Fighter's Pass and have people go crazy over reveals like Crash Bandicoot, Doom Guy, Master Chief, maybe even Ratchet and Clank? Sure, they absolutely could, and people would eat it up. But with Sakurai telling us how much work it was for those fighter passes, and on top of that, him just coming off of working on his dream project with Kirby Air Riders, I'm pretty sure he's going to have nothing in the tank, especially having to come up with more fighters, plus on top of that, a new Smash Brothers in the next 3 to 4 years. He's going to literally work himself into the grave. And something else that I'm tired of hearing is Smash is done. We're not getting a new Smash Brothers game. When this is one of Nintendo's consistent best sellers across the consoles, there's no reason in the world for Nintendo to ever stop. Even if Sakurai decides to step down from developing these eventually, Nintendo's not going to throw money out the window and decide to just stop making one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time. So not only would this be kind of a slap in the face for people that bought the new console and been playing Smash Ultimate actively since 2018 and want to see something new and want to see maybe even some new movesets for some of those older characters, but this would also be an incredibly jam-packed high task for Sakurai to complete. From his own passion project, DLC for this Smash Ultimate game for a Switch 2 edition, and then also making the next Smash Brothers game that would come years later, maybe even for the next console. He would just absolutely be overwhelmed. I absolutely love the Smash hype and character reveals more than the next guy. I would get so anxious and nervous as we hear the Smash logo sound and wait to see what character is going to pop up on the screen. Those reveals mean so much to the Nintendo community as a whole, but at the same time, I'd rather have those character reveals for a new Smash Bros. Game for Switch 2, not giving us yet again even more DLC for an almost 8-year-old Smash Bros. Ultimate. But thankfully we haven't seen anything yet, and it also shows you with games that they haven't given Switch 2 editions. Like for instance, they haven't given Luigi's Mansion 1 yet. They pretty much just skipped Mario Odyssey and gave it a little patch when the game came out. No Switch 2 edition, which makes me believe that that's because there are games coming relatively soon in those franchises, which is a good sign. So I'm kind of hoping we don't see anything from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate until the next Smash Bros. Game. But let me know down below, are you on Team Smash Ultimate DLC? Do you just simply care about new characters and that's all you're looking forward to? Or are you on Team Brand New Smash? Maybe you just want to see a new game with new modes and a new story mode to play with, also with some new characters. But let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a blessed day. See ya, guys.